Jazz is much like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. The history of jazz really begins in the New Orleans area of America, and the first kind of jazz form that came out from ragtime, which made Scott Joplin famous, was what we call New Orleans jazz or trad, i.e. traditional jazz, which is normally in a 2/4 tempo. It was brought to the fore by a lot of the African American musicians that were living in those areas. And again, jazz evolved over the years into various forms. The first change in style from trad came with the bebop era in the 1940s. People like Charlie Parker, the saxophonist, made that style famous along with his contemporaries in jazz at the time. From the 40s and into the 50s, right through, came the big band era, and lots of big names like Duke Ellington and his big band, Count Basie and his big band. These were the black musicians who helped forge another style which was due to supersede theirs. The next style to come in on top of the big band era, which by the end of the 50s was waning in its popularity, was jazz fusion, later to become morphed into a new title known as jazz rock. It was a complete fusion between rock music and jazz, more so electronic jazz. The bands that made jazz rock famous were, of course, Chick Corea's band Return to Forever, Weather Report, The Crusaders, and John McLaughlin's Mahavishnu Orchestra. These and other bands like them helped to propel jazz rock and what became known later as funk. Of course, we mustn't forget the modern jazzers either, the folk who continued the tradition even up to this day. People like Art Blakey, the drummer, with his band, Dave Brubeck Quartet, Miles Davis, the famed trumpeter, Charlie Mingus, the composer, the Modern Jazz Quartet, Thelonious Monk, and finally Oscar Peterson with his trio. All these people helped to continue the popularity of the art form in music known as jazz. And now on the TC Music Show, our Zoom interview with special guest. Hello folks and welcome to another TC Music Show. Today I have a very well-seasoned jazz musician. His name is Satish Robertson. Hello, Satish.
Hello, hello.
Great to have you on the show, and I'm really pleased because I do have an affinity with modern melodic jazz, not so much the avant-garde, but modern melodic jazz. I have an affinity with. So it's great to have a jazz trumpeter on the show. So please, one question to start us off. What made you choose trumpet as opposed to saxophone or sitting tickling the ivories or whatever?
Well, piano was my first instrument, but when I heard Miles Davis,
right,
that was it. That's where I wanted to go. Miles is my reason for going to the trumpet.
Did you feel you had a kind of affinity with the instrument?
Yeah, I loved it. Hearing what Miles did with it made me want to play. And in beginning the trumpet, I quickly found that it was going to require a lot of work to build up the embouchure, and it certainly has made me work harder than anything else in life. But the whole time, the affinity was there, the love was there, and to this day, the love is there. I love it.
Brilliant. That's great. Who were your influences when you were starting out in trumpet, apart from Miles Davis? Who else? Was it Louis Armstrong? Was it Freddie Hubbard? Was it Dizzy Gillespie? Who was it?
Miles was my first influence. After him, I really got into Clifford Brown, then Lee Morgan, Freddie Hubbard, and then Woody Shaw.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. These guys are kind of pioneers, really, aren't they? You know, I used to, when I was a drummer, you always thought, right, there's drummers, they're good drummers, but then there's kind of the drumming gods, and they're up there. And I feel like with every kind of musical instrument, be it piano or trumpet, sax, drums, whatever it might be, there's always kind of gods that are up there in the heavens, like your Miles Davises. To quote a pun on Miles' name, he was miles and miles ahead of anybody else. I've watched so many interviews about the guy, and he's, how can I say, I think everybody's different in camera, right? But I think I would have loved to have sit down with him and had a good jaw, you know, with no cameras and stuff, just to reel him, because he was a bit of a cool cat. He didn't suffer fools gladly, did he?
Nope, not at all.
So, how long have you been playing professionally?
I've been playing professionally for 18 years.
18 years, right? Wow.
Yes.
And do you remember the first instrument you started with?
Uh, well, my first instrument was piano. I started piano at 7 years old.
Right?
And to this day I play. I don't always practice it the way I should. Unlike trumpet, but that was my first instrument and still love it.
Right. And what was your first trumpet? Do you remember that?
My first trumpet, if I remember correctly, I think the brand was Belltone.
Beltone, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
And that,
grabbed it.
was that a good brand? Is it a kind of
It
entry
was
level?
a it was a pretty affordable student model trumpet at the time.
Right, right. And what are you playing now then? What brand?
Well, now I have two band. I have three trumpets, two cornets, two flugelhorns. My
Right,
main trumpet switches back and forth between a vintage 1961 Constellation 38B, which is a very popular model that's been played by people like Maynard Ferguson, Tom Harrell, Freddie Hubbard, Chet Baker. And
right.
when I'm not playing on that, I'm playing on a recently acquired 1973 Olds Ambassador, which I was surprised to find out was a student line of trumpets. But when I borrowed a friend's, he had his customized, and that thing plays just as well as any of the big boys that I've played. So I, in turn, bought one myself and hooked it up, and it plays just as well as any professional model I've played on.
Well, have you ever tried the Cohen Selmer trumpets, Cohen trumpets before they merged?
Yeah, I used to go to brass shops and spend like upwards to like 2 or 3 hours trying different trumpets. And Carl Sommer has some excellent models.
Um, how was your tuition? Who taught you then as a young person? Trumpet. We're going to concentrate on trumpet. So, who taught you the
So
basic?
my first great mentor in trumpet was a man by the name of Rob Hankey. So I'll try to give a very brief background on this. So I came to trumpet at 20 years old. So at 23, I had the good fortune of attending free music workshops given by this jazz group called Spirit of Life Ensemble. And Rob Hinkey was one of their trumpet players. He took me under his wing. He taught me a whole lot. And then that branched off to many other trumpeters coming into my life and teaching me various facets of the trumpet. So if I just briefly name a few names,
Sure,
they
go
would
ahead.
be Rob Hankey, Vinnie Coutro, the late Ted Curson, who played with Charles Mingus in the 60s,
Right, right.
Japanese guy named Ryo Sasaki, through the Jazzmobile program. I've had the good fortune of studying under Jeremy Pelt, who's one of today's foremost trumpet players. I've had Roy Hargrove take me under his wing when he was alive. So I've had the good fortune of learning from some of the top tier trumpet players out there.
Mm. That's quite amazing, that, because it obviously helps if you've got top level teachers rather
Yes.
than just the kind of average Joe. Um, I remember many years ago, I was a voluntary percussion tutor with a youth concert brass band, and the wee guy that was teaching the kids, he was a champion trumpet player, but boy, was he a real crab apple. He shouted the faces of
Oh
the,
no.
and I mean, he was fine with me because I was an adult, but oh God, I don't know how these kids stuck it, because he really shouted and bawled at them. And I thought, that's a terrible way to teach, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Terrible. Yeah. What are your passions and your ambitions as a jazz trumpeter?
All my passions and ambitions. Well, I like to really make the listener feel a part of the journey that the music is. Music is a journey to me. Music is storytelling to me. Music is like atmosphere to me. So what I try to do, whether as a player or even as a composer, is I try to bring the listener into the atmosphere and make them feel like they're going on a journey with me. So
Mm-hmm.
that's very important for me for music, not just merely technical exhibitionism. I want to make the listener feel and be moved by the music.
I used to wonder, like the classical musicians, because I write a lot of classical music. I've been doing for a long time now. But I used to wonder, how can they play the same piece and not be bored out of their skull, with this piece? And how do they bring it alive? Because it's written. Whereas in jazz, at least, you can extemporize. You can look at the skeleton and go, right, I'm off on a journey, like a cadenza that a fiddle player would play.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So how is that for you then when you're playing pieces? Do you always try to be different?
yeah. Every time I play a piece, I always try to bring new life into it. It could be a standard that I've played 5,000 times. I'm going to try to do something unique with it each and every time.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, you said that you were a composer, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
what styles of music do you compose?
Well, most of my compositions can be labeled jazz. However, they're very varied. So some of my compositions are more on the romantic side of things, other more on the suspenseful side of things. I just try to tell various stories.
Hmm.
Even if there's no words, I try to convey different emotions: suspense, excitement, discovery, fear, love, courage, anything.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That is great because it shows me that you get a passion for the thing. So tell me about the venues that you play. Whereabouts are you playing currently?
I've played wherever the action is, man. I've played in venues such as Blue Note, Birdland, Jazz Standard when that venue was around. I
Right?
just played, yeah, I just thought I played a nice venue in Easton, Pennsylvania last Friday. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to give this venue a shout out because they were a very, very nice venue to play jazz at. It's called the Lafayette Bar. The owner there is a man named Tunzai, and he's so cool. And a lot of great jazz musicians have played there. I was surprised I never heard of the venue before. I played there with the great drummer Khalil Kwame Bell, and we had a blast. I absolutely look forward to playing that venue again.
Yeah. I used to, as I said, I used to study a lot of the early jazz drummers. like Gene Krupa, Louis Bellson, Buddy Rich, Joe Morello, Art Blakey, Kenny Clare, Kenny Clark.
Hmm.
When I was in my kind of jazz rock, obviously, the man was Billy Cobham. Because,
Oh yeah, I love Billy Cobham.
Jesus God, I watched this guy one time. He was doing this thing with one hand. I mean, with two, he was doing it with bloody one hand, and I was like, where's this guy come from? And he went round the kit at 100 miles an hour, but he was very technical. He was
Right.
just, I mean, talk these, I say drum gods, but these guys put many, many hours in, hundreds of thousands of hours to become as good as they come. But they have that extra edge, that God thing that sets
Yeah.
them apart from, well,
Yes.
I'm a drummer. Who are you? Well, I'm a drumming god, kind of thing. That's what sets them apart. And Cobham was one of my heroes. Another guy was the guy that played with Chick Corea, Lenny White. You
I
know
had
that?
the honor of meeting Lenny White. I had the honor of meeting him.
You
Yeah, yeah, I met Lenny White, shook his hand and everything. And
I would have loved to have met Lenny White.
yeah,
Had a couple of Chick Corea albums when he played with Return to Forever. There was Stanley Clarke on bass, Lenny White
hmm,
on drums, and Chick on the piano. And Lenny White was a big inspiration for me because he was so free form. I mean, it
yeah,
wasn't just one and two and three and four and ding. I mean, Lenny was all over the place. And yet, because it's jazz rock, the timings can be a bit weird but wonderful. He was always on point. And as I say, him and Cobham and all these other guys, great influences on me.
those guys are an excellent example of those guys are the pinnacle of what I was talking about in terms of taking you on a journey in the music.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. These are guys, if I could put it this way, imagine you go into a restaurant and you get served a salad, right? Or you go into a restaurant and you get served a lovely big 3-course meal, right? Now, these guys are the 3-course meal, they're not the salad. You feel as if your mind's been fed when you've watched these guys because there's just so much there. Whereas other guys, you maybe watch, I won't mention names, I don't want to embarrass anybody, and you just know, oh, that's salad. There's
Yeah,
nothing there to really engage me.
yes,
That makes sense to you?
100%.
Yeah. I mean, have you heard of a wee kind of folk band called the B-52s?
The B-52s, yes, yes.
Right.
Those are the Japanese ladies, right? No, no, no. I got the wrong B-52s. I know who you're talking about. I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
They're American. There's Fred. He's a kind of, I suppose you could call him a rapper. It's not rap per se, but it's kind of spoken song. And then he's got two chicks, and they do the ABBA type harmony stuff,
yeah,
very close harmonies. But the drummer is a guy called Sterling Campbell. Have you heard of him? Sterling Campbell, yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
on bass, my big darling Tracy Wormworth on bass. See her? Tracy Wormworth. She is just gorgeous. Well, I better not saying because I'm married. But also, great bass player, Tracy. And Sterling is such a technical guy. And again, these are good musicians. Oh, you've got the horn there. Come on, then.
Right.
You're going to show me.
Hmm.
What are you going to do with that horn? Because you've got it in your hand.
Oh, you see? Well, it's been sitting on my lap this whole time.
Ah,
But
right. Let's give us a look at it then.
so this is the
Yeah.
Olds Ambassador with the Harmon mute inside.
Yes. Yeah. So, do you play like the B flat and C trumpets, piccolo trumpets, and
Yeah, yeah. All my horns are B flat horns. Yes.
right, right. Um, Stupid question, but bear with me. I'm not a trumpeter, but I know that most trumpeters play B flat. But do you think it's necessary then to have an E flat or a C or a piccolo trumpet in A? Or I mean, is it
It's
necessary? Do you think?
it's necessary if you play in the orchestral world because in the classical field, there are a lot of compositions specifically written for those horns because of the brightness of the sound. Any horn can play in any key, but the horns that are naturally pitched in those keys have the brightness necessary to convey the intent of the compositions written for those horns.
Mm-hmm.
As a jazz player or a pop player, any non-classical style of music, you're perfectly fine with just a B flat horn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you know it's a funny thing? You're going to laugh at this, but it's absolutely true. I've had two dreams over the years, and in the dream, I'm in a music shop, right?
Mhm.
And I picked up a trumpet and started playing this trumpet. Dead easy. I mean, obviously, it's just a dream. But, I often wondered why it was a trumpet came into the dream because I play keyboards and piano and different instruments, but I've never tried a trumpet. But I will say this much: I can understand. Over the years, I've come to appreciate acoustic instruments more and more
Right.
because there's just you and a piece of metal,
Mhm.
and it's you that brings the sound out, the same as a cello player, a double bass player, or a violinist, or whatever. It's just them and a piece of wood with some metal strings on it. There's no amplification, there's no special effects, and that I like is this organic thing where it's just you and a trumpet or you and a fiddle or something like
Yeah.
that. And you don't get that with electric instruments. It's impossible to get that natural feel. You just can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't get the dynamics either. You can't play piano or forte or fortissimo or whatever it is without going over and cranking up an amp or turning down an amp. You'd need to have somebody
Exactly. Yeah.
there who knew the songs outside in, and that would become a piece of nonsense. That somebody sitting, turning up and down. And that's the great thing about a real instrument, because once you learn the dynamics, it adds to the piece.
It really does.
Yeah. So tell me, as a trumpet player, what are your favorite pieces of music to listen to?
My favorite pieces of music to listen to. I have such an eclectic taste of music. So that's an answer that ain't as easy to me as I would have assumed it would be. I can name a few pieces that continue to be my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, I can always go back and listen to Woody Shaw and listen to the compositions on his album Woody 3. Or I can always go back and listen to Clifford Brown play Stardust.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or I could always go back and listen to Louis Armstrong play St. James Infirmary. Yeah.
But I know what you mean, because for me, I'm much the same with certain songs and stuff. You could just play them forever. They
Yes.
they never date, and they never wear thin kind of thing.
They never lose their magic.
Yep, I'm glad you said that because I couldn't think of that. But you're right. That's exactly it. They just don't ever lose their magic. I'm watching a musical on YouTube just now by Scott Joplin. Now, this was a jaw dropper for me. It really was, because I never knew Scott Joplin composed two operas. I know it sounds silly because he obviously composes piano tunes, but what I mean is I never knew he did the classical stuff as well, or the operatic stuff. I had never heard of the guy that was known as the Black Mozart, because Mozart's one of my favourite classical composers. And this guy, I listened to his stuff and it's absolutely amazing. But again, did anybody hear him? No. Most of my musical heroes have been black musicians, like
Mhm.
Oscar Peterson. I mean, I have never, ever seen, I mean, the man's mind is so mathematical. I just
Absolutely.
I can't even compete with stuff like that. But
Yeah.
he's got this great music mathematical mind as well as the talent as well.
Yes.
And I had a
I
wee
have one for you very quickly. If you have not seen it already, go on YouTube and pull up Oscar Peterson and Count Basie. He was interviewing Count Basie and they had a beautiful piano duet happening together. And they
right,
talked about Duke Ellington and Art Tatum.
right. I'll need to watch that because I've watched Oscar over the years, and sadly the man's gone now. But I always enjoyed the Oscar Peterson trio, and again because it's Oscar, I just think the guy is just on his own, stands in his own, just different class, different
No
class.
question.
And these are the people you would love to have met, wouldn't it? And
Absolutely.
sit down and chat to and just kind of, you know what
Absolutely.
I'm talking about. These guys are just amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
I'll get you back. I've got quite a lot of folk just now, and obviously I'm going to rotate, but I would like to get you back again, and we could
Yeah, I would
speak.
love to come back. I very much enjoyed this and thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Well, folks, that's it for this episode. I do hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to tune in to YouTube every Thursday, Friday for the next show, and I'll see you there. And as always, please like, subscribe, and leave your comments. So I'll see you in the next show. Bye.